All right, welcome. Today we're going to break down a skill that is absolutely fundamental for any of you aspiring to be business leaders. We're talking about the art and science of identifying and, more importantly, capturing target markets. Honestly, this is a core competency that's really going to set you apart in your career.
So let's make this real with an example right in our backyard. Think about a powerhouse like Lowe's with its headquarters just up the road in Mooresville. How do they approach marketing to a DIY homeowner on a Saturday afternoon versus a professional contractor on a Tuesday morning? They don't just guess. They use a very precise, very strategic playbook, and today we're going to walk through that exact playbook.
So here's our game plan. We're going to tackle this in 5 key stages. We'll start with the basics, build up to the strategic process, talk about how to slice up the market, how to evaluate those slices, and finally, how to make the big decision and forecast your sales. It all lines up perfectly with your course's learning objectives. Let's get started. Okay, first things first. Before we can even begin to think about targeting a market, we have to get on the same page. We need a really rigorous, strategic definition of what a market actually is.
And here is the absolute key takeaway. A market is not just a bunch of people. It's a group that has a proven need for something, but, and this is a big but, they also have to have the ability to buy it, the willingness to actually spend their money, and the authority to make that purchase. You need all 4 of those elements, no exceptions.
Now let's get into that playbook I mentioned. We're going to unpack the core framework that marketing leaders use to go from a massive, broad market down to a very specific and hopefully very profitable target.
Think of this 5-step process as your strategic roadmap. It's what guides you from that high-level, big-picture strategy all the way down to the final selection of who your actual customers are going to be. It's a proven path, and it works. All right, now we're diving into the first 2 steps, and you could argue these are the most critical decisions you'll make in the whole process, choosing your overall targeting strategy and then picking the variables you'll use to carve up the market. So your first option is what we call the undifferentiated strategy. You can pretty much think of this as a one-size-fits-all approach. It really only works in markets where customer needs are almost identical. For basic commodities, think table salt or something simple like that. Now on the flip side, you've got the concentrated strategy. This is where you put all your eggs in one basket, allowing for deep specialization in one single niche. This can be super powerful for companies with limited resources, maybe like a local craft brewery that only makes sour beers. But you can see the risk, right? If that one segment's taste changes, you're in trouble. And finally, there's the differentiated strategy. This is what you see from giants like Nike or L'Oreal. They develop totally distinct marketing mixes for multiple different segments to really maximize their reach. I mean, just think about Nike. They have separate product lines, different ads, even unique stores for runners, for basketball players, and for the fashion-focused sneakerheads. That's differentiation in action. So how do you actually do that? Well, this is your toolbox. It lays out the 4 main ways you can slice and dice consumer markets: demographic, geographic, psychographic, and behavioristic. These are the core variables for truly understanding your customers.
First up, demographics. And there's a good reason these are the most common. They're often tied directly to what people buy, and just as importantly, they are easy to measure. Things like age, income, gender. You can get this data relatively easily and start your analysis.
Next, geography. And believe me, geography matters a whole lot. Variables like climate and population density directly change what people need. A company selling snow tires in Boone is going to have a very different focus than one selling swimwear in Wilmington. And you can get super specific with this, right down to micro-marketing in a single neighborhood. Okay, now we go deeper with psychographics. This is where we start segmenting by things like personality, motives, and lifestyle. This isn't just about who the customer is, it gets to the heart of why they buy. A perfect example is a brand like Patagonia. They target people who value sustainability and outdoor adventure, and their marketing speaks directly to those psychographic drivers.
And last but not least, we have behavioristic variables. This is all about segmenting customers based on their actual behavior and their relationship with a product. Are they a heavy user or a light user? Are they fiercely loyal to your brand, or do they jump around? Or maybe they're just looking for one specific benefit, like toothpaste for whitening versus toothpaste for sensitive teeth. Okay, so once you've used those variables to identify your segments, the work isn't done. Now you have to build out detailed profiles for each one and evaluate if they're actually a viable option. This is really where your data starts to turn into actionable business insight.
Think of developing a profile like creating a detailed persona, almost like a character sheet, for your target segment. It spells out what they all have in common, and just as importantly, what makes them different from all the other groups out there. This profile is what helps you look in the mirror and ask, can our company actually serve these people well?
Now comes the hard math. The evaluation is a really rigorous analysis. You have to estimate the total sales potential for that segment. You have to do a deep dive on the competition, who's already playing in that space, and what are their strengths. And you have to realistically calculate what it will cost you to serve that segment. Because remember, a segment might look attractive, but it's worthless if it's not profitable.
All right, we're on the home stretch. This brings us to the final critical steps, actually selecting your target market and then forecasting future sales. This is so important because it dictates planning and resource allocation for the entire company. So when it all comes down to it, the ultimate decision really hinges on two big questions. First, are the needs of these customer groups different enough to even justify creating a unique marketing mix for them? And second, does our company, do we, have the money, the expertise, and the infrastructure to actually compete and win in those chosen segments?
And once you've made your choice, you have to forecast. This just gives you a sense of the range of tools you have at your disposal. It can be anything from the gut feel of experienced executives, what we call executive judgment, all the way to really complex statistical models like regression analysis. The truth is, most successful companies use a combination of these methods to get the most accurate picture possible.
So, to wrap this all up, let's look to the future. Technology is not slowing down, which means the ways we segment markets are going to keep evolving too. We now have access to absolutely massive amounts of data on consumer behavior, on their lifestyles, on everything. And look, as you all head out into the business world, your ability to identify and leverage the most powerful segmentation variables, that's going to be a huge determinant of your success. So which one do you think it's going to be? Which variable will be the most powerful in the years to come?